Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Today, I want to ask you a simple question. When was the last time you sat in complete silence? No phone, no music, no television, no noise at all. Just you sitting still doing nothing. For most people, that question feels uncomfortable because most people cannot remember. And that is not an accident. We live in a world that is always moving, always talking, always asking for your attention. Your phone buzzes, your inbox fills up, someone needs something from you, and you move. You react, you respond, you keep going. But somewhere in a quiet room far away, a Zen master sits still. He does not move, he does not check his phone. He does not think about his to-do list. He simply sits and breathes and waits. He has been doing this for years. And in that silence, he has found something that most people spend their whole lives looking for: clarity, peace, a deep understanding of who he really is. Today, we are going to talk about that. This lesson is for English learners who love ideas that go beyond words, ideas that change the way you see yourself and your life. We are going to explore the power of stillness. We are going to look at why Zen masters sit in silence for hours. And we are going to ask a question that most people are afraid to ask. What would you find if you stopped running? By the end of this lesson, something inside you may shift. Not because I told you what to think, but because stillness has a way of doing that. It shows you what was already there. Be still and know. Let us begin. Lesson 1. Think about your average day. You wake up, and before your feet touch the floor, you reach for your phone. You check your messages. You scroll through the news. You see what other people are doing, saying, thinking, and your day has already begun, but not with your own thoughts, with everyone else's. You get up, you make coffee, the television is on, or the radio, or a podcast. Something is always playing, something is always talking to you. You eat breakfast with noise. You drive to work with noise. You sit at your desk with noise. And at the end of the day, you come home and you turn on the television again because the quiet feels strange, because the quiet feels empty. But here is the truth. The quiet is not empty. You are. Pascal, the French philosopher, said something that stopped me when I first read it. He said that almost all of the problems of human life come from one simple thing: a person's inability to sit quietly in a room alone. He wrote those words almost 400 years ago, and today they are more true than ever. We are not a generation of busy people. We are a generation of people who are afraid to stop, afraid to be still, afraid to sit alone with our own thoughts even for 5 minutes. Why? Because when the noise stops, the real things begin to surface. The questions you have been avoiding, the feelings you have been pushing down, the parts of yourself you have not looked at in a long time. And that is uncomfortable. So you reach for your phone, you put on another video, you find another distraction, and the cycle continues. There is a word for this in psychology: rumination avoidance. It means you keep yourself busy so you do not have to feel, so you do not have to think too deeply, so you do not have to face the things that are waiting for you in the silence. But here is what no one tells you. Running from silence does not make you free. It makes you tired. It makes you reactive. It makes you a person who is always moving but never arriving anywhere. The noise of the world is not random. Your phone is designed to pull your attention. Social media is built to keep you scrolling. Advertisements exist to fill every quiet moment with a new desire, a new fear, a new reason to buy something, to do something, to be something other than what you already are. You are living inside a machine built to keep you distracted. And most people never question it. They just keep moving. But every now and then someone steps out. They find a quiet room. They sit down, they close their eyes, and they begin to listen not to the world, but to themselves. Those people change slowly, quietly, from the inside out. The first step towards stillness is not meditation. It is not a special technique. It is simply the decision to stop adding more noise, to stop filling every moment, to stop running from the silence that is waiting for you. The noise will always be there. The question is whether you will let it be the only thing you hear. Lesson 2. Most people misunderstand stillness. They think it means emptiness. They think it means doing nothing, thinking nothing, feeling nothing. They picture a monk sitting on a mountain with a blank face and an empty mind. And they think that is not for me. I have a job, I have a family, I have things to do. I do not have time to sit and think about nothing. But that is not what stillness is. Stillness is not the absence of thought. It is the presence of awareness. It is not running away from your life. It is finally meeting it. Think of a glass of water. When you shake it, the water becomes cloudy. You cannot see through it. But when you set it down, when you stop moving it, the dirt slowly settles to the bottom and the water becomes clear again. Your mind works the same way. When you are always moving, always reacting, always filling your time with noise and activity, your thoughts become cloudy. Your feelings get mixed up with everyone else's opinions. Your desires get confused with other people's expectations. You lose track of what is real and what is just noise. But when you sit still, even for a short time, something shifts. The mental clouds begin to settle. And slowly you start to see more clearly. You start to hear your own voice again, not the voice of your boss or your parents or social media, your own voice, the one that knows what you actually want. Thich Nhat Hanh, one of the most respected teachers of mindfulness in the world, spoke often about this. He described stillness not as a retreat from life, but as a deeper engagement with it. To be truly still, he taught, is to be fully present, to feel the ground beneath your feet, to notice your breath, to be here in this moment without rushing to the next one. That sounds simple, but it is one of the hardest things a person can learn to do. We are trained from childhood to be productive, to be useful, to be doing something. Sitting quietly feels like wasting time. It feels lazy. It feels like you are falling behind. So even when you have a moment of quiet, your mind fills it immediately. You make a plan, you replay a conversation, you worry about tomorrow. Real stillness means letting that go. Not forever, just for now, just for a few minutes. It means trusting that the world will keep moving without you for a moment. It means believing that you do not have to solve everything right now. It means giving your mind the one thing it almost never gets: rest. Not sleep, rest. The kind that comes from being quiet, from being present, from doing nothing and letting that be enough. When Zen masters talk about stillness, they are not describing a special state that only monks can reach. They are describing something that every human being already has inside them: a place of quiet, a place of calm, a place that is always there underneath the noise. You do not create stillness, you return to it. And the more often you return, the easier it becomes to find your way back. Lesson 3. In the 6th century, a monk traveled from India to China. His name was Bodhidharma. He was not an ordinary monk. He had studied for decades. He had walked thousands of miles. He had crossed mountains and oceans to bring something important to a new land. And when he arrived, he did not give speeches. He did not write books. He did not build a school or gather thousands of students. He found a cave, he sat down, he faced the wall, and he did not move for 9 years. 9 years of silence. 9 years of stillness. Just one man, one wall, and the vast quiet space between them. People thought he was strange. Some thought he had lost his mind. But Bodhidharma was not hiding from the world. He was doing something far more difficult than anything the world could offer him. He was looking directly at himself. That practice, sitting in stillness without distraction, became the foundation of Zen Buddhism. And it spread across China, Japan, Korea, and eventually the entire world. Today, millions of people practice what Bodhidharma started in that cave. They call it Zazen, sitting meditation. And at its heart, it is exactly the same as what that ancient monk did centuries ago. You sit, you breathe, you do not run away. Now, you might think this is a religious practice, something only for monks or spiritual people. But consider this. Steve Jobs, one of the most creative and successful people of the 20th century, was a devoted student of Zen Buddhism. He studied under a Zen teacher for years. He meditated regularly. And he often said that his ability to focus, to see clearly, to create things that change the world came not from working harder, but from going deeper, from stillness. Jobs did not sit facing a wall for 9 years, but he understood what Bodhidharma understood, that the clearest thinking does not come from a busy mind, it comes from a quiet one. Zen masters practice Zazen not to escape their lives, but to see their lives more clearly. When you sit in stillness long enough, the mental chatter begins to slow down. The urgent feelings become less urgent. The fears that seemed enormous begin to look smaller. And underneath all of that noise, something simple and clear begins to emerge. You begin to see what is real, not what you think is real, not what other people have told you is real, what actually is. That is what Bodhidharma found facing his wall. Not emptiness, not nothingness, but a direct and honest meeting with reality, with himself, with the present moment exactly as it was. And that is deeply uncomfortable at first, because most of us have spent years building a comfortable story about who we are. We have told ourselves we are busy because we are important. We are distracted because the world demands it. We do not have time for stillness because there is always something more urgent. But in the silence, those stories lose their power. And what is left is something much simpler and much more true. The Zen tradition has a saying, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. The actions do not change, but the person doing them is completely different because they are doing them with full attention, with presence, with the kind of awareness that only comes from spending time in stillness. You do not have to sit facing a wall for 9 years. You do not have to become a monk. You do not have to leave your life behind. But you do have to stop even for a moment and look. Because the wall that Bodhidharma faced was not made of stone. It was made of everything he had not yet understood about himself. And when he finally saw through it, everything changed. Be still and know. Lesson 4. Here is something that sounds strange, but stay with me. When you sit in silence and do nothing, your brain does not stop working. It actually begins working in a completely different way, a deeper way, a way that is not available to you when you are busy, distracted, or reacting to the world around you. Scientists call this the default mode network. It is a system of connected regions in your brain that becomes active when you are not focused on any specific task. When you stop doing, when you sit quietly, when you let your mind wander without direction, this network switches on and something remarkable happens. Your brain begins to process unfinished thoughts. It connects ideas that seemed unrelated. It finds patterns you could not see when you were too close to the problem. It quietly works on the questions you have been carrying, the ones you have not had time to sit with. This is why your best ideas often come in the shower, or just before you fall asleep, or during a slow walk with no destination. Not because those moments are special, but because in those moments you have finally stopped pushing. You have finally given your mind the space to do what it does best when left alone. Creativity does not come from pressure, it comes from space. Insight does not come from forcing, it comes from allowing. The greatest thinkers in history understood this even without the science to explain it. They built stillness into their days not as a luxury, but as a necessity, as part of the work itself. They knew what most modern people have forgotten, that rest is not the opposite of productivity, it is the source of it. Think about the decisions you have made when you were tired, rushed, or overwhelmed. The emails you sent in anger, the choices you made under pressure, the words you said when you had no space to think. Now think about a decision you made after a long walk or a quiet morning or a night of good sleep. The difference is not intelligence. The difference is clarity. And clarity comes from stillness. The Zen tradition speaks of something called mushin. It means no mind. Not the absence of thought, but a mind that is open, free, and unattached to outcomes. A mind that can see what is in front of it without the weight of expectation, fear, or habit. It is the opposite of a busy mind. A busy mind reacts. A still mind responds. A busy mind sees problems. A still mind sees possibilities. A busy mind is loud. A still mind is clear. And here is the paradox that most people miss. The more you try to force a solution, the further away it moves. The more you push for an answer, the harder it becomes to hear one. But the moment you stop, the moment you sit down and breathe, and let go of the need to figure everything out right now, something quietly shifts. The answer was not missing. You were just too loud to hear it. This is not mystical. This is not magic. This is how the human mind actually works when you give it the conditions it needs. Silence is one of those conditions. Stillness is one of those conditions. And the irony is beautiful. The thing that looks like doing nothing is often the most productive thing you can do. Not because you are lazy, not because you are giving up, but because you are finally giving your mind what it has always needed to do its best work. Space, quiet, time. Stop pushing, Start listening. See what arrives. Lesson 5. There is a reason most people avoid silence. It is not because they are too busy. It is not because they do not have time. It is because they are afraid of what they might find there. And that fear is completely understandable. Because when the noise stops, when the distractions fall away, when there is nothing left to look at except yourself, the things you have been carrying begin to surface. The grief you never fully felt, the anger you pushed down because there was no good time for it, the loneliness you covered with activity, the questions you have been postponing for years. What do I actually want? Is this the life I chose or the life that happened to me? Who am I when no one is watching? These are not comfortable questions. They are not the kind of questions you can answer quickly and move on from. They require time. They require honesty. They require stillness. And most people are not willing to give them that. So they keep moving. They stay busy. They add more to their schedules, more to their screens, more to their lives. Not because they need more, but because more is easier than stopping. But here is what the Zen masters discovered, what every serious contemplative tradition in the world has understood for centuries. The things waiting for you in the silence are not there to hurt you. They are there to free you. The grief that surfaces when you sit quietly is not a punishment. It is your heart asking to be heard. The fear that rises in the stillness is not a warning to run. It is an old wound asking to finally heal. The loneliness you feel when you stop distracting yourself is not a sign that something is wrong with you. It is a signal that something in you is ready to change. Stillness does not create these feelings. They were already there. All stillness does is give them enough space to breathe. And when you give them space, something extraordinary happens. They lose their power over you. The fear that felt enormous in the dark becomes smaller when you look at it directly. The grief that seemed unbearable softens when you stop fighting it. The loneliness that drove you to check your phone 100 times a day begins to transform into something quieter, something more like solitude. And solitude is not loneliness. Solitude is being comfortable with yourself. That is what the Zen masters spend years learning. Not a technique, not a philosophy, but a simple, radical ability to sit with themselves without needing to be anywhere else. Be still and know. Know what? Know yourself, your real self, not the version you perform for the world, not the identity you built from other people's expectations. The self that was there before the noise started. The self that is still there underneath all of it, waiting quietly. Shunryu Suzuki, one of the great Zen teachers of the 20th century, said something that has stayed with me. He said that in the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities, but in the expert's mind, there are very few. What he meant was this: when you approach life with openness, with the fresh eyes of someone who does not yet think they know everything, you see more, you feel more. You are more available to what is actually happening rather than what you expect to happen. Stillness gives you that beginner's mind back. It empties you of assumptions. It quiets the expert voice that thinks it already has all the answers. And in that emptiness, something new becomes possible. Not a new idea, not a new plan, something deeper than that. A new way of seeing. And when you see differently, everything changes. Your relationships feel different, your work feels different, your sense of who you are and what matters feels different. Not because the world changed, but because you did. That is what waits for you in the silence. Not darkness, not emptiness, but yourself, whole and quiet, and finally ready to be seen. Lesson 6. We live in a culture that celebrates busyness. Ask someone how they are doing, and 9 times out of 10, they will tell you they are busy. As if busy is the same as important. As if filling every hour is the same as living a full life. As if the person who sleeps the least, works the most, and never stops moving is somehow winning at something. We wear busyness like a badge. We compare our schedules the way other generations compared their salaries. And somewhere along the way, we started to believe that rest was weakness, that silence was laziness, that a person who sits quietly and does nothing productive is somehow falling behind. But look at what this belief has built: a world full of people who are exhausted, a world full of people who cannot sleep, cannot focus, cannot finish a thought without reaching for their phone. A world full of people who have everything they were told to want and still feel like something is missing. Something is missing. And it is not more, it is less. Marcus Aurelius was one of the most powerful men in the ancient world. He commanded armies, he ruled an empire. And yet in his private writings, he returned again and again to the same idea: that the noise of the world was not real power, that real power was internal, quiet, unshakable. He wrote that you have power over your mind, not over outside events. And that when you understand this, you find your strength. He was not talking about giving up. He was talking about going inward, about finding the stillness underneath the surface of a busy life and building from there. Oprah Winfrey has spoken openly about her practice of silence and meditation. She has said that sitting quietly, even for 20 minutes each morning, gives her something that no meeting, no achievement, and no amount of success ever could: clarity. The ability to hear her own voice clearly enough to trust it. And that is the thing about people who have built something lasting in this world. Not just financially, but in terms of meaning, relationships, wisdom. They almost always have a practice of stillness, a way of returning to themselves regularly in the middle of a world that never stops asking them to look outward. Because the world will always ask more of you. It will always have another notification, another demand, another reason to keep moving. The world is very good at filling silence. The world is very good at making noise feel necessary. But the things that matter most do not come from noise. They do not come from hustle. They do not come from doing more and sleeping less and optimizing every hour of your day. They come from depth, depth of thought, depth of feeling, depth of attention. And depth requires stillness. Not all day, not every day, but regularly, consistently, as a practice, not a reward. The most productive thing you will ever do is not answer one more email. It is not attend one more meeting. It is not push through when you are empty and call it discipline. The most productive thing you will ever do is stop, sit, breathe, and return to the quiet place inside you where the real thinking happens, where the real decisions are made, where the real you lives. The world rewards noise, but it remembers stillness. Lesson 7. Every day you make hundreds of decisions: what to say, what to do, what to believe, who to trust, how to respond when something does not go the way you expected. Most of these decisions happen quickly, automatically, without much thought. And that is fine for small things. But for the decisions that matter, the ones that shape the direction of your life, automatic is not enough. When you are stressed, your brain does something very specific. It narrows. It focuses only on the immediate threat. It stops looking at the bigger picture. It stops considering long-term consequences. It reacts fast and hard based on fear. This is useful when you are in physical danger, but most of the stress in modern life does not come from physical danger. It comes from emails, from deadlines, from relationships, from the gap between where you are and where you think you should be. And when you react to those things from a place of stress and noise, you make smaller decisions, shorter decisions, decisions driven by how you feel in this moment, not by what you actually want for your life. You say things you later regret. You make choices you later question. You close doors that did not need to be closed and open ones that were never right for you. Now think about the opposite. Think about a moment when you felt genuinely calm, grounded, clear. Maybe it was after a long walk in a quiet place. Maybe it was early in the morning before the day had started. Maybe it was after a night of real rest. In that state, how did you see things differently? The problems that seemed urgent felt more manageable. The people who frustrated you seemed more human. The path forward, which had seemed invisible, became a little clearer. That clarity is not luck. That clarity is what a still mind produces. In Zen practice, there is a concept called joriki. It means the concentrated power of mind that comes from regular meditation. Not intelligence, not talent, something quieter and more reliable than both. A steadiness. An ability to remain clear when everything around you is complicated and loud. People with joriki do not make better decisions because they are smarter. They make better decisions because they are calmer. Because they have practiced returning to stillness so many times that they can find it even in difficult moments, even when the world is asking them to react. This is something you can build, not overnight, but gradually through practice, through the simple discipline of sitting still regularly and letting your mind settle. You do not need to meditate for hours. Research on mindfulness consistently shows that even short, regular periods of stillness, 10 minutes a day, 15 minutes a day, are enough to begin changing the way your brain responds to stress. Enough to begin widening the space between what happens to you and how you react. And in that space is where your best self lives, not the self that reacts from fear. Not the self that makes decisions based on what other people think or what feels easiest right now. The self that sees clearly, that chooses deliberately, that acts from a place of quiet internal knowing rather than external pressure. The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius returned to stillness every morning. He wrote in his journal before the day began, not to plan, but to center himself, to remind himself of what truly mattered, to prepare his mind to face whatever came with steadiness rather than chaos. He ruled one of the largest empires in history, and he believed that the most important territory he would ever govern was the few quiet inches of space inside his own mind. So do the Zen masters. So did Steve Jobs. So does anyone who has ever built something that lasted. A still mind is not a passive mind. It is the most powerful kind. Lesson 8. You do not need a special room. You do not need a cushion or a candle or a mountain monastery. You do not need to quit your job, leave your family, or travel to Japan to sit with a Zen master. You need 2 minutes and a place to sit. That is it. That is the beginning. I know that sounds too simple. We are so used to being told that meaningful things require sacrifice and complexity and a long list of steps to follow. But stillness is not like that. Stillness is the simplest thing in the world. It is the one thing your body and mind already know how to do. You just have to stop preventing it. So here's what you do. Find a quiet place. It does not have to be silent. It just has to be somewhere you can sit without being interrupted for a few minutes. A chair in your bedroom, a bench in a park, the floor of your bathroom before the rest of the house wakes up. Anywhere will work. Sit down. Keep your back reasonably straight, not rigid, just upright enough that you feel awake and alert. Place your hands in your lap. Close your eyes or lower your gaze to the floor in front of you. And then breathe. Not a special breath, not a technique, just your normal breath moving in and moving out. Notice it. Feel the air entering your nose. Feel your chest or your belly rise. Feel the breath leave. That is all. When a thought comes, and thoughts will come, you do not fight it. You do not try to push it away. You simply notice it. You say to yourself quietly, there is a thought. And then you return to your breath. Again and again. That is the practice. Return, return, return. You will not be good at this immediately. No one is. Your mind will wander. You will think about dinner, about a conversation you had last week, about something you forgot to do. And every time you notice that you have wandered and you come back to your breath, that is not a failure. That is the practice working exactly as it should. Each return is a small act of strength, a small act of choosing stillness over noise. Start with 2 minutes. Tomorrow, try 3. Next week, 5. There is no destination here. There is no level to reach. There is only the practice itself and what it quietly builds inside you over time. The Zen masters did not begin with 9 years of silence. They began with one breath, one moment of attention, one small return to the present, and then another and another, until stillness was not something they had to find. It was something they carried with them everywhere they went. You can build that too, not by doing more, by stopping more, by choosing regularly and gently to come back to yourself. 2 minutes, a quiet place, your breath. Begin there and see what grows. We have covered a lot of ground today. We talked about the noise that surrounds us and how most people never question it. We talked about what stillness really is, not emptiness, but a deeper kind of presence. We looked at Bodhidharma and his wall at Zazen and what the Zen masters discovered through years of sitting. We explored the paradox of doing nothing and how a quiet mind produces the clearest thinking. We sat with the uncomfortable truth that the things waiting for us in silence are not there to hurt us. They are there to free us. We looked at a world that rewards noise but builds nothing lasting without stillness underneath. And we talked about how the calmest minds make the wisest choices. And then we came back to something simple. 2 minutes, a breath, a return. You do not need more information. You do not need another book, another course, another video explaining the theory of stillness. You already know enough. What you need now is the practice, not tomorrow, not when life gets quieter, not when you have more time or less stress or a better situation. Now, in the life you already have, with the noise that is already there. Because stillness is not something you find when the world finally cooperates. It is something you choose again and again in the middle of everything. The Zen masters did not wait for a perfect moment. Bodhidharma did not wait for a comfortable wall. He sat, he breathed, he stayed. And in that staying, he found everything. You do not have to sit for 9 years. You do not have to become a different person before you begin. You are enough right now, exactly as you are, to take one quiet breath and return to yourself. That is the invitation, not a demand, not a challenge. Just a door left open for you whenever you are ready to walk through it. Be still and know. If this lesson moved something in you, share it with someone who needs it. Leave a comment and tell me what is one moment of stillness you will create for yourself this week. I would love to hear from you. And until next time, keep listening, keep growing, and let the quiet teach you what the noise never could. See you in the next lesson.